Hello and welcome to this third day of the Plural Positivity World Conference 2022 and the second day of programming and the first and keynote presentation of the day on plurality and harm reduction. We're your host, Vulpes Automata, and we are so pleased to be here to be presenting to you, all the great wonderful plural folk out there, one of us, one and the same, and talk on a subject that's near and dear to us, harm reduction. So let's get into it, shall we? Yeah, let's do it. A little bit about ourselves, is we go by Vulpes Automata. Our nouns are the doll, the fox, the elf, fox doll. If we have to go with a pronoun, go with it. We're recovery support specialist, certified hypnotist, and EMT from Connecticut of the United States, and self-identifying member of the neurodiversity, queer, trans, plural, otherkin, Therian, and transhumanist communities. We're an advocate for these groups because we love them so much, along with mind, body, health, and wellness, and peer support. We're also facilitators for Harm Reduction Works and Hearing Voices Network. Now, let's get into a quick overview. So we're talking about harm reduction, and harm reduction is a term in philosophy that's growing in acceptance in many circles, and strategy that aims to reduce the harms associated with certain behaviors. We'll try not to go verbatim on the PowerPoint, but it happens. We're going to be talking about harm reduction. We're going to be introducing it to you in a couple of different ways. Ways of working with harm reduction and how it can help folks. We're going to talk about how to discuss and work with system members to identify areas where you can talk about harm reduction, how it benefit the system and the different members of the system, how to form a harm reduction strategy, and consideration of unique scenarios specific to being plural, the plural experience, through the lens of harm reduction. Now, before we get too deep into it, I do want to mention some content advisories, some trigger warnings. Part of the discussion today, we're going to be talking about our living experiences, as all experiences are well lived. Some content that will be discussed may be in some of the following. We're going to be talking about substance use as fact, not going too deep. Talking about intimacy and sex and relationships as fact. Again, not going too deep. Various behaviors and habits that may have risk of harm or consequences as a fact. And overall emotional body health. We're going to de-emphasize presenting this discussion as aligned with a medical model or promoting approaches that emphasize abstinence. But, if you have harm reduction in your life and it leads to abstinence, that's a great or positive thing for you, and that works, and that's perfectly acceptable. But in all of this, we want you to remember that if you need to take a break from this presentation, please do. Make yourself safe. Make yourself relaxed, make yourself more comfortable, take a moment to ground. It's going to be a recorded presentation, so you can catch it later. You can come back to it later. The impact of our experiences are different for everyone and every many, so we're going to try to balance the needs of presenting content with that awareness. All right, so let's step forward into the presentation. So as a quick overview, right at the beginning, harm reduction is a term in philosophy that's growing in acceptance in many circles as a strategy that aims to reduce the harms associated with certain behaviors. Now, a lot of that means that harm reduction has its roots in substance use behaviors like drugs and alcohol, but also it moves out into sex and intimacy, along with other behaviors like gambling, anything that has a risk associated with it. And these aren't the only areas where we can think about reducing harm. We're going to give a lot of examples of harm reduction in action after expanding what other areas we could consider reducing harm. So, it may seem a little bit weird, but we'll work it out. So, again, it's framed in behaviors around substances and intimacy and risk activity, but it also can be more relatable to everyday activities and behaviors that have risks and rewards, benefits and consequences. These activities include everything from how much sleep we get, what choices we make in our relationships with just food and drink, what activities we choose to engage in recreationally, hobbies, interests, the environments we place ourselves in for work and living, all of these things. Some of these factors have a choice. We have choice and influence to adjust how they can benefit us and by interacting and being a part of. And sometimes we don't always have those choices. We don't have that same ability. Some areas we cannot. Harm reduction can be applied to help us in most of these areas, and often we're used to reducing harm. So, for example, one example is how we cross a road. Usually we'll look left and right before we cross. We'll listen for oncoming cars, or we're walking across a road at a designated crosswalk with signals and signs, so we avoid being injured by oncoming traffic. It's an example of something we've been taught. We come to know by our experience to help us live more safely and reduce our risk of harm. But it doesn't eliminate the risk entirely. But it is a basic example of harm reduction. Just because we take all these steps, accidents still happen. But by taking some of these steps, the likelihood of these risks affecting us go down. So, how is that different for plurals? With overwhelming and respect and consideration for the diversity of being plural, or the plural experience, and all the ways that we're different, we're going to try to approach this in a way that can be adapted to most as best we can. So, if something doesn't resonate with you or fit with the way things are for y'all, we understand and appreciate that. We're trying to do a best fit and our best to try to convey something that has worked for us and a few others. So we got to go with what we got. In short, what one system member or being takes for knowledge, fact, and appreciation of harm or risk in any behavior activity, another they just might not. With the fact that our body or form is a shared resource in the aspects of the world aspects of the world may see that body or form without respect to us as many, that could create some challenges, such as maintaining freedoms, relationship difficulties, body health, and other dimensions in overall well-being. It's a lot. We understand that being plural is not easy, and having the world sort of appreciate all that goes into that can be a little bit difficult. So, with all of this in mind, we want to make sure that, it's important to form harm reduction strategies before one or all of us are harmed proactively, rather than after or reactively. In other words, we want to have these talks, these conversations, these ideas, these thoughts before something that could be really harmful happens. So, the first part before forming these strategies is reducing harm reducing harm or risk is on risk. We need to talk about what risks are for different system members. We're going to offer a few that come to work within our system, but everyone's different, so that conversation is going to be a little bit different for everyone. And it will be, and that's okay. That's good. So here's some examples that we've had at a glance, and we've had many different conversations about harms and risks. So we just picked 3 to just kind of glance over. So Vulpes, Foxstall, the one that's presenting to you right now. We knows how to drive a car. We do. Along with another system member. They're pretty good at it. They were around when we learned to drive. And there's several others that don't. Like the little doesn't know how to drive. The cat doesn't know how to drive. They don't know how to drive. Age and experience. Now, we've identified it that that's a risk. We don't want these folks driving the car. This could be very scary and very dangerous. So there's another example would be substance use. Well, we know about we don't tend to drink, and usually on occasion, because we know about alcohol. We're not really super enthusiastic about it. We have another in our system that is very fond of drinking. So, but the thing is that all of us, we want to keep our bodies safe and limit our consumption. And the other members are pretty keen about keeping healthy and not having too much alcohol because of for various reasons. Risk, body health. We see that as risk. Another consideration is food allergies and food sensitivities. Vulpes, me, us. We have a keto vegetarian diet, and we want to not make it a triggering thing or a fad diet. It's not for weight loss. There's other medical necessity, that mental clarity and other things that, we don't have to go into all the details, but there's medical reasons that we have a particular diet for us. We also have 2 food allergies. The other system members are okay with our vegetarian diet and respect the allergies, but they really want to enjoy carbs, sugar, and bread to eat. Something that with a keto diet you can't have too much of. Not getting into all the details, but they enjoy them. But even small amounts could cause complications, and now that's an example of a risk. So we've assessed a few different risks that we have to really have these conversations with our system. So with risks like these, it's a mutual responsibility to balance risk and support each other. So this is where harm reduction and plurality intersect. For instance, us, Foxdoll, might make an agreement with the one that prefers to drink. And we have. We've maybe said that, hey, if you want to have 2 servings of alcohol while they're up front, because, hell, they're going to be up front. They have a life. They're part of us. They have their own life. It's great to give life to everyone. Everyone gets to share. And so we ask, hey, would it be okay if you were to stop at 2 and also get some water in there, so that if you go to bed and we wake up, Foxdoll wakes up and you're asleep, and also, or if we had to drive, we want to make sure that there's some limits that keep us safe. And we also have to go to work tomorrow. We want to just keep us well overall. And we talk, we work it out. And if it's agreeable, we want to hear their side of it. If there's any alternatives, and then we kind of agree on that. And that would be a simple way of approach, a strategy where we had communications, we got to hear each other's, where it may be pros and cons, balance risks and rewards for each other, and come to a solution that works well enough for both of us. We tend not to be overbearing with explaining or being heavy-handed with repercussions and penalties, because at least for us, we try to approach it as these are our kin, our family, our friends, they're us, and we don't want that kind of stress placed on each other. We want to share in growth and learning and accountability together. And if somebody slips, and what if this other in our system had 3 drinks? What if they we ended up getting a little bit of a not feeling so well because they had more to drink than we felt like that was a little much for our body, and we ended up coming into this state. Well, that's a slip, and we're going to learn from it. We're going to work together. We're going to talk to each other and see what the circumstances was, and we're going to work together, because we want to try to build that sense of togetherness and something that works for all of us. We're going to learn from it. So what does it look like when we can't have that same negotiation, that same risks that aren't as negotiable? Like, for instance, littles, or how do they see the world? How do they think about risks and stuff that could harm them? How is about others that don't have the same values or understanding? Or they just choose to ignore it. They're going to live how they're going to live, and that's how it's going to be. This can be a lot more difficult, but we shouldn't ignore it. For instance, with the littles, that might require, a system member to patiently teach and educate or limit access, much like we child-proof a house, to make it safer to folks that are curious or might not grasp why something might be harmful, whether it's a food item, an object, substance, or behavior. Sometimes there's gates, so littles don't go up and down the stairs. Sometimes we need to put away sweets or something, or they might get into where there might be any other substances that are dangerous or toxic, any number of hazards around the home. Curious minds. But even though we might educate or limit access, or they might be some part of the strategies that are effective for some system members, it might be more difficult for those who have a capacity to engage the world. They're more fully capable. They have access to tools like our ID, our credential, money, develop life skills like how to drive a car, how to buy things, how to get what they want, how to engage and make relationships, engage in intimacy, use substances. They're able to do these things, or any other number of risk behaviors. They engage in risk behaviors with less regard to harm or risk to themselves or others. Now, those strategies are going to be varied. In cases like this, it might take more sincere conversations, listening to objections, and offering some advanced interventions. We're going to have to go a little deeper. We're going to have to go a little more overall, have a broader view. So what do we do when someone doesn't want to participate in reducing harm for themselves or the system? So this is going to be a little bit more challenging. This is going to be difficult because the unique nature of coexistence, some aspects of shared reality such as body health and presence in the world. So in short, the tools of harm reduction may include providing support, listening, supporting. We might even want to think about giving that system member, if they're having a more difficult time, support to different resources. Like maybe they specifically talk to a support group. Maybe they specifically talk to a therapist. Maybe they have a specific set of supports that help them work with that risk. Maybe they're not open to that. Maybe they are open to that. Maybe it's something that we can offer. Maybe it's something they don't know how to access. Maybe they never thought about harm reduction as a strategy. Maybe they see things as all or nothing, and just the conversation alone itself is a great way to start things off. But it also might be ways to engage in a behavior more safely. Like say, hey, maybe you can moderate this a little bit. Maybe instead of the all of some substance, you could have the little less of some substance. Maybe if you're going to have a lot of relationships and those are going to be intimate encounters, maybe you could use safer sex methods. Maybe if you're going to do things that are substances that have a risk by the fact that they could introduce diseases or something, you could use sterile equipment. Maybe you could use testing, whether you're testing a substance or testing your body for sickness, diseases, infections. This would be great for all of us. Maybe other ways that we can have those conversations might be around finances. Maybe we could have healthier relationships. Maybe they don't, not all members of the system have come to know the world the same way. Maybe if they had an appreciation of what other members of the system had for life goals, what things they want, what kind of freedoms or what kind of rights we want to preserve or what might be taken away if it comes to legal or ethical consequence. Maybe if we have a conversation along those lines, maybe that might be another strategy in harm reduction, saying like, hey, what you're doing might create some very difficult moments for us. because you're using our phone and you're using our communications and you're making all these relationships, and people might not know Foxdoll from you, and then they're calling our phone and stuff and things, and it gets really awkward. Maybe we need to talk about how that's all supposed to work out so that we can have a balance. Maybe that hasn't been mentioned quite the same way. They're looking at one form, same form, but it's you, not me, and this is a little bit awkward. So we want to have those conversations beforehand. Again, that's just one example. Now, when we talk about some of those examples, where they might be the same kind of conversations that we don't just have with someone who's plural or within our own system, but approaches we might use to a friend or loved one that we want to support. And that's important to recognize. Often the approaches that we use to help others externally, or others that are not within our system or collective selves, are similar, but there's absolutely harm reduction strategy that's plural specific. So let's get into that. Start things off, we're going to offer a simplified version of an experience that presented a challenge in harm reduction to ourselves. And so we had an acquaintance that was both friends to Vulpes, Foxdoll, this one right here, and another one in the system that we were both fondly in appreciation of. And they presented to us desires and pressures for relationship and intimacy that would cross our boundaries and challenge existing relationships that we had with our long-term partner, and other things. But that's enough to say, hey, this relationship's going to cross some boundaries. And they were going to cross them in a way that was going to be too much too much, and there was a lot of pressure. This created a critical conflict in our household, and we had to end the relationship on all levels. And that action left the other system member really saddened and hurt and upset and wishing to seek and maintain or resume the relationship initially. That hurts. We had to act unilaterally. It took a lot of it was very difficult. It took a lot of sympathy, empathy, and understanding to underscore why such an abrupt action was needed for the safety of everyone, including the other system member. It took a lot of patience and understanding, and also that it can result in a disagreement. But what we have to sometimes appreciate is that sometimes unilateral actions where one of us has to act in the best interest of the safety of the system, they're not the best of times to have to do that, but sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes we have to just act. At least what we can do, what we're trying to convey is, and if we have to do something unilaterally, that we try to have an understanding and appreciation and be at the ready to offer sympathy and empathy and understanding. So that's what we're trying to offer, is try to be considerate of others if we have to do something that's unilateral in the safety and interest of everyone. So another scenario, I might be accommodating system member that needs supervision to stay away from harm when co-fronting or co-conscious supervision may not be enough. In other words, really letting anyone in the system just be there and be front, and it's their call, their ball. But if it's something like littles, for example, it might be wonderful to just have two littles meet for a play date. And, having two littles do as they please may need the keen supervision of a third person, like a plural friendly sitter, caretaker, friend, someone that can appreciate the unique challenges of each little and promote a safer environment. It's very important that part of a harm reduction strategy is knowing that external supports, friends, peers, allies, those who understand all that we are, all of who we are, all ourselves, all our beings, us, can support and have other relationships in other ways, because it's always not going to be the same person up front. But again, looking at our form, ourselves, our body as a resource, and our wellness as a resource, not only do we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to live and to exist and to experience this wonderful world, but can do so with a sense of support. And again, it might be from different other people. We don't have to all have the same friends as system members, but there is a little bit of that accountability and accommodation. So it's just another concept that's uniquely plural of my supports may not look the same as another member's supports, but it would be important and very good to make sure that every member has supports, has strategy to keep themselves safe. That's what we're trying to go for. So it isn't always that easy. Sometimes it's difficult for harm reduction to take place because of unique challenges of being plural. Sometimes we have memory isolation and memory walls and amnesia and language barriers, perceptual differences, diverging ethics, trauma, differences in grasping knowledge, and other variants among system members. Are not all the same. It's just how it is. And that's, I don't know, to me it's a great thing. To us, we love being us. But it takes a lot of patience and empathy, compassion to get all the members on board sometimes. It's definitely an effort. So getting to know each other and paying close attention to understanding life through each other's world lens and experience, it's really going to lend itself to a better appreciation of what harm and risk means to them and how they see the world. They might actually have a better grasp on things than we do. They may be more risk aware than even we are, and that's actually pretty cool. They may be more adverse to certain risks. They might be more cautious. That's cool. And we got to see what it is for them, and not just how they behave and act like they do. It's like we want to know why they make their choices. We want to appreciate it, and we want to share why those choices are important to us and why we do the things we do. And if we step back a little bit, it's not just a skill for working within our system. That ability to see the world through other people's lens and experience may lead to better appreciation where people are at. That's a great way to work with the system, everyone, every many, and a great way to make connection. What we want to know in that point is that before there's any sense of change, or even if there is a need to change, we need to connect. We need to make connection. Because when we have connection, we have that understanding and a foundation from which we can build on. And we may not need to even change anything. We might need to be the ones that are doing the changing, because they may have a better sense of risk and harm reduction than we do. There might be something that we can learn from others within our system. Kind of neat to think about. And this also works in the in the world beyond our systems, beyond ourselves. It's just a great thing to do. So that's how we can kind of expand out when we're thinking about harm and harm reduction. So just to summarize, harm reduction for plurals is different than that of harm reduction usually associated with substance use and behaviors of singlet assumptive or medical models. it is more beneficial to be proactive and have conversations and connection early and talk about harms and risks rather than be affected by them by the consequence of one or many. This approach falls more along the lines of being mentors and educators to ourselves, friends, and not persecutors or enforcers. It's that empathy and that understanding and that compassion and creating an open dialogue that creates change by choice, not by force. It creates a more sustainable relationship within the system and a better life for us all. That's harm reduction. That's how we come to learn more about each other, more about ourselves, and we just have a better world, a better life, better a better us. It's that simple. Complex in some ways, but when you break it down, it's a great way to look at how we can be better to each other. So that's it for now. Thank you so much to the Plural Association, many who have attended and supported the Plural Positivity World Conference. If you want to keep in touch with us or have a question on the content presented, you can email us at vulpes.automata@gmail.com or Twitter, Vulpes Automata on Twitter. The views expressed by us are exclusively ours and not the Plural Association or its affiliates. But we're so glad that they have given us a chance to share our voice, share some thoughts, and share something special that means something to us and hopefully means something to you and helps things be very helpful, healthy, and very positive for you and yours. So that's all for today, and have a great rest of the conference, and thank you so much for having us and listening to us spout on about harm reduction today. Anyways, take care.